It was a Tuesday morning in Rawalpindi, the kind where the sun is just starting to burn through the fog, and the streets are still sleepy. I was sitting on my balcony, sipping chai, when I saw him. A cat. Not just any cat. This one had a certain presence. His fur was matted, his eyes wide and alert, and there was something about the way he moved, cautious yet confident. He paused at the edge of my garden, sniffed the air, and then, as if deciding I was worthy of his attention, he approached. I froze. Not because I was afraid, I love cats, but because I had never seen this one before, and he was wearing a collar. Now, in Rawalpindi, collars on stray cats are rare. Most street cats are wild, unclaimed, and unmarked. So, a collar meant this cat had a home. But why was he here? And why did he look so lost? I stood up slowly, not wanting to startle him. He stopped, watching me with those wide, intelligent eyes. Then, to my surprise, he did something I wasn't expecting. He meowed. Not a typical cat meow, but a soft, almost pleading sound. It was as if he was trying to tell me something. I bent down, extending my hand. He sniffed it cautiously. Then, with a grace that belied his scruffy appearance, he jumped onto the balcony railing and sat there staring at me. I didn't know what to do. I had never seen this cat before, and yet there was a connection, an unspoken understanding between us. I glanced at his collar again. It was a simple black leather strap, worn but sturdy, and attached to it was a small, weathered tag. I leaned in closer, squinting to read the faded engraving. It said, "To my beloved companion, I am sorry. Please forgive me." I blinked, unsure if I had read it correctly. I leaned in again, rubbing my eyes, but the words were still there. "To my beloved companion, I am sorry. Please forgive me." I stood up straight, heart pounding. What did this mean? Who was this cat? And why was he here, delivering a message that seemed more like a plea than a note? I reached out slowly, my fingers brushing the tag. The cat didn't flinch. He just kept staring at me, those wide eyes filled with, what? Hope? Regret? I didn't know, but I knew one thing for sure. This was no ordinary stray, and this was no ordinary message. I had to find out who he was, but first, I needed to get him inside. I turned back into the house, calling softly, "Come on, little one." To my surprise, he followed me, hopping gracefully through the open door. I led him to the kitchen, where I set out a bowl of milk. He sniffed it, then looked up at me, as if to say, "I am not here for food." I sat down across from him, studying his face. There was a story behind those eyes, a story I was determined to uncover. But where to start? I decided to check the collar again. Maybe there was more to the message than I had initially seen. I leaned in, examining the tag closely. Beneath the words, there was a small engraving, a phone number. I froze. A phone number. I had to call it. Maybe the person on the other end could shed some light on this mysterious cat and his cryptic message. But as I reached for my phone, the cat did something unexpected. He jumped onto the table, knocking the phone out of my hand, and then, with a swift motion, he swiped the tag off his collar. I gasped. How had he done that? He stared at me, the tag now dangling from his mouth. Then, with a flick of his head, he tossed it onto the floor, out of my reach. I stood up, heart racing. What was going on? Was this cat playing games with me? I bent down to retrieve the tag, but when I looked up, the cat was gone. He had vanished, just like that. I stood there, stunned, holding the tag in my hand. The words were still there. "To my beloved companion, I am sorry. Please forgive me." but the phone number was gone. I had no way to trace him, no way to find out who he was or why he had come to me. I sat back down, staring at the tag. It felt like a puzzle, a mystery I couldn't solve. But I wasn't ready to give up. I had to find him. I had to understand. What was this cat trying to tell me? And why me? I didn't know the answers yet. But I was determined to find out. And so, my search began. But little did I know, this was just the beginning. The beginning of a story that would change everything, for both of us. The moment the cat disappeared from my kitchen, I felt something snap inside me. A strange mix of frustration, curiosity, and a deep, inexplicable connection. I was holding that worn tag in my hand, the faded words still vivid. To my beloved companion, I am sorry. Please forgive me. And that scratched out phone number? Gone. Who was this cat? What was he trying to say? And why did it feel like he had chosen me? I spent the rest of that morning pacing around my apartment in Rawalpindi, the city slowly waking up outside my window. The call to action was clear. I needed answers. Rawalpindi, if you've never been, is a bustling, chaotic blend of old and new. Narrow alleys lined with crumbling brick houses, vendors shouting over the noise of motorcycles and rickshaws, and stray cats darting between shadows, invisible to most people. I see them all the time. They're survivors, quick, wary, independent. They don't belong to anyone and everyone at once. But this cat, he was different. For one, he was cleaner than any street cat I'd ever seen. Not groomed exactly. More like neglected, like someone had cared for him once but had stopped. And that collar? It screamed owner. But why would an owner just let him roam, looking lost and desperate? My first thought was to ask neighbors. I live in a modest apartment block in Satellite Town, a mix of families, students, and elderly folks who all know each other casually, but keep mostly to themselves. I knocked on the door downstairs, where Mrs. Nazir, a kind woman in her 70s, lives. "Have you seen this cat before?" I asked, showing her a photo I'd taken on my phone. She peered at it closely. No, not that I recall, but a cat with a collar, that's rare." Her eyes narrowed. "Sometimes people abandon pets when they can't take care of them anymore. Or maybe it ran away." It was an answer I didn't want, but it was something. Next, I went to the nearby veterinary clinic. Dr. Khan is well known in the area. He treats a lot of strays brought in by kind people. I described the cat, showed him the tag. He shook his head slowly. "No microchip?" "That's odd. Most cats with collars have one." "Any idea what the message means?" I asked. He smiled sadly. "People sometimes leave messages like that when they lose a pet. Maybe the owner feels guilty. Maybe the cat ran away, and they're hoping someone will find him and forgive their absence." His words echoed in my mind. Hoping someone will find him. Because I had found him. I hadn't expected to see him again. But as darkness crept over the city, I was sitting on my balcony, still holding the tag, thinking over every detail, when I saw movement down below. There he was. The same scruffy cat, appearing out of the shadows like a ghost. This time, he wasn't cautious. He looked tired, almost resigned. He walked straight up to the stairs and without hesitation, climbed them to my balcony. I reached out slowly, and this time, he let me pet him. His fur was rough, tangled, but his eyes were soft. I whispered, "Who are you, little one?" He didn't answer, of course, but there was a gentleness in the moment, like he was finally allowing himself to trust. That night, I sat at the table, The cat curled up on my lap, purring softly for the first time. I stared at the tag again. Something was bothering me. The phrase, "To my beloved companion, I am sorry. Please forgive me." It sounded like a goodbye, or maybe an apology from a person who'd left him behind. But the message felt too cryptic to be random. I pulled out my phone and began searching the words online, thinking maybe it was a known phrase, a quote from a book or poem. Hours passed. I found nothing that matched exactly, but one thing stood out. People often use similar words in messages left on memorial plaques or in notes when they lose a pet, especially when the pet has been abandoned or lost. I wondered, could this cat have belonged to someone who was in trouble? Someone who wanted to reach out? Days passed. Every day, the cat grew bolder around me. He ate, slept in my apartment, and followed me like a shadow. I named him Shadow because of the way he slipped silently into my life. But the mystery of his tag weighed heavily on me. One afternoon, while I was walking him on the street, yes, I was literally walking my cat now, a man stopped me. He was older, maybe in his 50s, wearing a faded jacket and a tired expression. "Is that your cat?" he asked quietly. "No," I said. "He just showed up." The man nodded, looking at Shadow with a strange intensity. "I think I know where he's from," he said. My heart skipped. "Where?" I asked. The man hesitated. "There's a neighborhood on the edge of town, old houses, some abandoned. They say people left in a hurry, leaving behind pets and things. Maybe he's from there." He handed me a small, folded piece of paper with an address. "Be careful," he said. "That place isn't safe." I looked at the address, feeling the weight of it. That night, after Shadow had fallen asleep on my lap again, I made a decision. Tomorrow, I would go. I would follow this lead, even if it meant stepping into a place shrouded in mystery and whispers. Because whatever story Shadow carried, I needed to find it. And maybe, just maybe, I could help him find peace. Sitting here now, writing this, I realized that this wasn't just about a stray cat anymore. It was about loneliness, loss, and the small ways we try to make amends, even when words fail us. Shadow wasn't just a cat. He was a messenger, and I was about to follow his trail into the heart of a mystery. I remember that morning like it was yesterday, even though weeks have passed. The air was thick with humidity, the kind that presses against your skin and makes every breath feel heavy. Rawalpindi had started to shed its usual morning calm, the streets already buzzing with people rushing to work, vendors shouting their daily specials, and the chaotic symphony of rickshaws weaving through the crowd. But my focus was elsewhere. In my arms, Shadow, the cat who had stolen my heart and tangled my thoughts, sat quietly, alert and watchful. I held the folded piece of paper tightly in my hand. The address written on it wasn't far from where I lived, but it felt like stepping into another world entirely. The place the man mentioned was called Old Catchery Lane. It's a narrow, twisting street lined with crumbling houses that once held bustling families but were now abandoned or half empty. The paint was peeling off the walls and the windows were darkened with dust and grime. There was a distinct silence here, the kind that feels heavy, like time had slowed down or stopped altogether. As I walked down the lane, with Shadow perched quietly on my shoulder, the wind whispered through the broken branches of dying trees. The smell was a mix of damp earth, dust, and something older. Loss, maybe, or memories left to rot. I felt eyes watching me, Not human eyes. The quiet movement of shadows in windows, the faint stir of something unseen. Shadow twitched his ears and glanced around, his body tense but steady. The address led me to an old 2-story house with a faded wooden door hanging slightly ajar. A rusted gate creaked as I pushed it open, and I stepped into the overgrown garden. I called out softly, "Hello? Is anyone here?" No answer. The house looked frozen in time. A child's broken toy lay half buried in the dirt, faded photographs taped to a cracked window, and a worn blanket caught on the porch railing. Shadow jumped down from my shoulder and padded inside the house, his paws silent against the wooden floor. The air inside was thick with dust and silence. It smelled like forgotten days and stories locked away. I explored slowly, trying not to disturb anything too much. On a small table in the corner of the living room, I spotted a notebook with worn pages. Curiosity overtook me. I opened it and began to read. The entries were dated over 2 years, written in careful, trembling handwriting. They told a story about a family, the Khans, who had lived here once. A father named Samir, a mother named Amina, and their little girl, Sarah. The last entries grew darker. Illness, financial struggles, and then a sudden departure. No explanation, no goodbye, only promises scrawled in fading ink. As I turned the pages, a photo slipped out. A picture of a cat sitting proudly on the lap of a woman with kind eyes. The tag around the cat's neck looked strikingly familiar. It was Shadow. My heart clenched. Shadow was their cat. But where were they now? And why had they left him behind? Suddenly, I heard a sound from upstairs, a faint meowing. Shadow's ears perked up instantly, and he dashed towards the staircase. I followed. At the top of the stairs, in what looked like a small bedroom, I found another cat, smaller, thinner, and scared. She was huddled in a corner, her eyes wide with fear. Shadow approached her slowly, and she responded with a hesitant purr. It was clear Shadow wasn't alone. There was a whole story here, a family in pieces, and 2 cats caught in the middle. Back downstairs, I found another envelope tucked beneath the notebook. Inside was a letter, written in the same handwriting. It read, "To whoever finds this, please forgive us." We had to leave. The world outside was closing in. Sickness, debt, fear. We couldn't save ourselves or our family, but we hope our cats find a home. If you can help them, we will be forever grateful. I sat there, the weight of the words sinking in. This was no ordinary stray. This was a message of hope, a plea for kindness from strangers who had lost everything. I looked at Shadow and the frightened cat now curled beside him. My apartment suddenly felt too small, too confining for the responsibility that had landed on me. I knew what I had to do. I had to become their protector, their voice, their family, because sometimes the most unexpected visitors bring with them stories that change your life, and maybe even your heart. That day marked the true beginning of our journey. A journey not just to uncover a mystery, but to heal broken bonds and create new ones. Shadow's silent plea had led me here, and now, with every purr and every cautious step, I realized that love doesn't just find us. Sometimes, it demands that we find it. I still remember how that day began, with the sunlight barely breaking through the thick clouds hanging low over Rawalpindi. The air was heavy, not just with the humidity, but with the weight of what I was about to uncover. After leaving the abandoned house on Old Catchery Lane, my mind was swirling with questions and a strange sense of urgency. Shadow and the other cat, whom I'd started calling Luna because of her pale eyes that seemed to glow even in the dark, had come back with me. They moved slowly in my apartment, tentative but safe, as if they knew the world outside was a dangerous place. The tag's faded message haunted me. To my beloved companion, I am sorry. Please forgive me. It felt like a riddle, one that demanded answers not only for Shadow, but for the family that had left him behind. I stared at the tag again, running my fingers over the worn leather collar. The engraved phone number had been scratched off, erased, but not completely. There was still a trace of digits, a shadow of a number that I could just barely make out. Taking a deep breath, I dialed. The line rang, twice, 3 times, and then a voice, old, weary, and hesitant, answered. "Hello?" I froze. The voice belonged to a man named Samir Khan. Samir's voice cracked as he spoke. "I don't know how you found me, or him," he said quietly. I explained about Shadow, the tag, the house, and the letter. Tears filled his eyes. He told me everything. How his family had fallen apart over the last 2 years. His wife Amina battling a chronic illness. Their daughter Sarah struggling with school, and the crushing debt that swallowed their lives whole. "We had to leave suddenly," he said. "I didn't want to abandon Shadow and Luna. They were family, but the sickness, the money, we had no choice. I'm sorry." His voice broke on the last word. Samir's sorrow was palpable through the phone. "I put that tag on Shadow the night we left," he continued. "A message for whoever found him, to tell them I was sorry, that I hoped someone would care." His apology was raw and human, a father's heartbreak folded into those simple words. I told him, "We'll take care of them. You don't have to worry." There was silence on the line before he whispered, "Thank you." The next few days were a whirlwind. Shadow and Luna adapted slowly, but I saw them begin to trust again. Shadow, once wary, haunted, started curling up on my lap without fear. Luna, who was timid and shy, even began to play with shadows cast by the afternoon sun. It was a small miracle, this quiet healing in my apartment amidst the noisy city. Then, one afternoon, a knock at my door startled me. Standing there was Amina, frail, but with eyes that held a fierce love. She had come back. Samir had arranged for her to see the cats, and after weeks in the hospital, she was ready. The moment she saw Shadow and Luna, tears streamed down her face. She knelt, reaching out trembling hands to stroke Shadow's fur. "I thought I'd lost you," she whispered. It was the reunion I never expected to witness. Raw, beautiful, and painfully real. Amina explained why they had left the cats behind. Their home had been taken over by debt collectors. They had no place to keep Shadow and Luna. Their only option was to hope someone kind would find them. I was too scared to look back, Amina said softly. But Shadow always carried my heart with him. Her words hit me hard. This story was not just about lost cats. It was about survival, love, and the scars we carry. Through Shadow and Luna, I learned about resilience, about how animals carry stories we often overlook, about the silent ways they ask for forgiveness and give unconditional love, and about how sometimes the smallest creatures ask the biggest questions. Who will love us when everything falls apart? Who will forgive when we can't find words? Now, as I sit here watching Shadow sleep peacefully beside me, I realize this story isn't just theirs. It's all of ours, about brokenness and hope, about finding family in unexpected places, about the power of forgiveness, even when it seems impossible. Shadow's tag was more than a message. It was a call, a reminder that love can heal wounds even when the world forgets. I never expected a cat to change my life, but Shadow did. Not just by showing up on my doorstep or by the mystery of the tag around his neck, but by pulling me into a story that was bigger than any one of us. A story about loss, love, and the fragile hope we cling to when everything feels broken. After Amina came to see Shadow and Luna, things shifted. It wasn't just about cats anymore. It was about a family trying to find their way back from the edge. Samir and Amina had been through hell. The illness, the debts, the loneliness, they left scars deeper than anyone could see. But seeing Shadow and Luna safe, cared for, it gave them a glimmer of hope. They invited me to visit them, and I accepted, feeling like a bridge between two worlds. Their new home was a small, rented apartment on the outskirts of Rawalpindi. It was humble, but filled with warmth, worn carpets, colorful cushions, and the faint smell of cardamom and spices. Sarah, their daughter, was quieter than I expected. She clung to her mother's hand, but smiled shyly when I showed her pictures of Shadow and Luna playing. "Do you miss them?" I asked gently. Her eyes welled up. "Yes," she whispered, "but I'm happy they're safe." There was a quiet dignity in that moment, a reminder of how, even in the darkest times, love holds on. Samir told me they were working hard to get back on their feet, finding jobs, paying off debts, and hoping to someday bring Shadow and Luna back home. But it wouldn't be easy. Shadow and Luna had grown attached to my apartment, to me. So we came up with a plan. I would care for them, visit the cons often, and help them feel connected. It was an imperfect arrangement, but it felt right. One evening, as I was leaving the Khan's apartment, I noticed Sarah struggling with her school books. She was trying to keep up but seemed overwhelmed. Without thinking, I offered to help with her studies. Over the next few weeks, what started as tutoring grew into a friendship. Sarah began to open up, laughing more, sharing stories about her favorite books and dreams. Shadow and Luna became part of our afternoons too, playful interruptions during math lessons or quiet companions while reading. Months passed. The Khan's situation slowly improved. Amina's health stabilized. Samir found steady work. Sarah's confidence blossomed. And through it all, Shadow and Luna remained the quiet thread weaving us together. They reminded me every day that family isn't just about blood or proximity. It's about presence, love, and choosing to stay. Then came the day that tested all of us. Samir called me, voice trembling. "We're ready," he said, "to bring Shadow and Luna home." My heart clenched. I'd grown attached to those two cats, to their little quirks and the comfort they brought me. But I knew this was what they needed. So, with a heavy heart, I packed their things. The day we reunited them with the Khans was full of quiet tears, soft purrs, and endless gratitude. Shadow, once astray with a mysterious tag, was finally home. Looking back, I realized this story is about so much more than a lost cat or an abandoned tag. It's about the invisible wounds we carry, the guilt, the fear, the hope that someone will see us and forgive us when we stumble. It's about the silent ways animals hold our hearts and stories, carrying our love and pain without judgment. And it's about the power of kindness, how one person's willingness to listen, to act, can change a life. Shadow taught me that sometimes, the most broken things can lead us to the strongest connections. That forgiveness isn't just a word, but an action, a daily choice to open our hearts. And that love, even in its quietest form, can heal wounds we thought would never close. I thought he was just a stray, but Shadow was a messenger, a reminder, a beacon of hope in a world that often forgets to stop and care. Thank you for following this journey. If you've ever felt lost or like you didn't belong, remember Shadow's story.